Hello friends, in this session we are going to discuss about the values and the setting values which we are going to apply for the setting of directional transient ground fault. What I mean is that in this session we are going to discuss which values we should give in the setting of the relay for maximum operational zero sequence voltage, the threshold 3I0 or the zero sequence current threshold and the zero sequence voltage threshold, the directional mode, and the settings in our trip logic we will discuss later on. First, the zero sequence voltage reset threshold, it is 2 volt, and mostly it depends on the value of the maximum operational threshold, but here right now we consider as a 2 volt. Normally it is internally set as a 2 volt. Below when the zero sequence voltage drops below 2 volt, then one reset signal will be generated, as we discussed in the 5th session of directional transient ground fault sessions. Then the reset signal will reset all the SR latches that are in our logic. Another setting value which we should give is the zero sequence voltage threshold value for triggering or for pickup. It means how much zero sequence voltage should be, that whenever it goes beyond that value it should pick up. Mostly we apply 15 volt for the transmission line, and whenever the fault type is very high resistive, then this value may be reduced. It means we will reduce the threshold value. Suppose that we have our system installed in a section A and B of a transmission line in bus A to B. Here we have a relay. Then accordingly, if there is a fault in the system, and also the path of this fault, is very high in resistance, it means very high resistive fault is there, then in our voltage phasor we know that suppose this is VA, VB and VC. I don't write V, maybe, okay, VA, VB and VC. We know that in a very high resistive, the value of this VA mostly remains very marginal change will be in VA, so obviously if the fault is on the phase A, then the value of this V0 will be, the zero sequence voltage will be very small. So if we want our system, if we want our relay to detect these type of the faults also and report these types of the faults too, then we need to consider the threshold value for the pickup of this relay. We need to set the V0 threshold very low. Approximately we can set in very high resistive faults to be reported and to be picked up, we may set this as a 5 volt instead of 15 volts. If we set this value of the V0 threshold very low, then very sensitive faults on the system will be detected, and this threshold will trigger out, and it will give a pickup signal. Now about the zero sequence current threshold for pickup. This value, mostly we give this value as a 0 amperes because if we give 0, then the effect of this threshold will be neutralized, and only the V0 threshold will be very important in our system, and it will be on always approximately 1, and it will be high forever. So the effect of the 3I0 will be neutralized in our system. For the case which we want only a direction result, if we don't want any pickup, if we want only to determine the result of the fault, then we give this as a 0, or you can find this 3I0 on the as a I of the neutral in our system, in the configuration. Then let's discuss more about the maximum operational V0. That is mostly we give in systems with ring type, we give as a 3 volt, because in ring type we have a very small V0 in operational mode. But in the ring or in a mesh type, we will discuss in the next lecture that how it should be set and how much we should give this value. To understand more, that is, if we have one radial type of the system, just A from B and B from B to another bus of C, and maybe from C to D. Mostly in this case, if we want to set our relay that is R1 or 2 R3 like this in each buses, then in this case it is our system is in radial type, and in radial type we mostly give as a V0 max operational. V0 max operational we give as a 3 volt. But in the systems with mesh type or ring type, let's discuss in the next lecture that we will have some different values rather than 3.